Good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the September 6th regular meeting of Council. The first item on tonight's agenda is the minutes of the Council meeting held August the 21st, 2017. I need a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the minutes. Moved by Councillor Salter, seconded by Councillor Burden. Are there any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. The next item on the agenda is the approval of tonight's agenda, and I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Beal and Councillor Salter. Are there any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Thank you. That is also carried. We have two delegations this evening. The first one is the Parksville Downtown Business Association Downtown Youth Ambassador Program. We're going to have a presentation by Willow, Cabral, and Ryan Smith to report to Council on their experience as the 2017 PDBA Downtown Youth Ambassadors. And Ms. Bottomley, do you want to say a few words as Executive Director of the PDBA? Go right ahead.
Your Worship and Council, thank you so much for allowing us to come back at the end of the summer to report on what we found in the wild, as our colleague Blaine Seapost calls it, the mobile visitor center that we provide from the Parksville Downtown Business Association. You met Willow and Ryan at the beginning of the summer. This is our third year that we've done this project. I think it's one of the best things we've ever done. It's certainly a lot of fun for me. I learn a lot from it too. And it's got a couple of aspects, not just providing information, but also outreach to our members. So that's an important role they have. So I will pass the next 10 minutes over to Ryan and Willow.
Welcome, Willow, and welcome, Ryan. So it's over to you. You've got 10 minutes.
Okay. First and foremost, I would like to thank you all for having us here this evening. My name is Willow Cabral.
I'm Ryan Smith.
And we were this year's Downtown Youth Ambassadors.
As the 2017 Youth Ambassadors, our summer consisted of information collection, providing aid and good conversation to both locals and tourists alike, and connecting with downtown businesses. As youth ambassadors, our role was to help tourists and locals find their way around Parksville downtown, whether it was finding them a place to eat or just directing them to where they want to be. We also visited multiple businesses, supplying them with maps and decals, as well as showing them their listing on the PDBA website. Throughout our 10 weeks, we collected lots of information. This presentation will elaborate on our findings.
Parksville attracts guests from all across the globe, and we, as youth ambassadors, were able to enhance their coastal experience by offering our help, expertise, and recommendations based on their own special requests.
We track tourists based on our encounters with them and license plates on their cars. As you can see by the graph, Albertans were the most common tourists we encountered during the summer with 73%, United States behind it with 16%, other parts of Canada had 9%, other parts of BC had 2%, and Europe and Asia with 1%.
Guest trends. The most popular area by far was the beachfront, which is a definite tourist favorite. The community park was the activity hub of Parksville during our summer, where we would be asked dozens of questions from friendly locals and curious tourists. Of course, Beach Fest and the Sandcastles were at the top of many tourists' minds, so a large portion of our summer was answering questions regarding Beach Fest and directing people towards the sand sculptures. We helped many tourists walking around downtown as well, but not nearly the numbers of the beach.
Parksville's tourist season peaked in late July, early August. With a vibrant influx of visitors, in addition to enhancing downtown life, these tourists also contributed to the local economy and growing traffic. Traffic was most congested along the Island Highway between Wells Street and Corfield Street.
Diversity and activity. As a West Coast oasis, Parksville is an island jewel that people far and wide have discovered, bringing those of different nationalities, backgrounds, and cultures together. The most popular activities throughout Parksville were family picnicking, cycling, sunbathing, swimming, kite flying, painting, and videography.
Throughout the summer of 2017, we've been able to connect with both locals and tourists, providing us with the opportunity to notice trends and what people are looking for, as well as receive ideas, support, and feedback. Interacting with everybody was highly enjoyable and quite interesting to hear all the different places people come from and what it's like.
Interaction trends. The most common topics we were questioned about were related to either the beach, the city, or travel. Most of our beach-related questions were asked by first-time tourists, wondering whether our beaches were more pebbly or sandy, asking about stores for purchasing hats, kites, and other beach gear, as well as asking if it was possible to rent paddleboards or surfboards. Others had questions regarding Beach Fest, such as the summer concert series schedule. City-related questions consisted of asking about bus schedules, what would be happening with the lot beside the beach club, and inquiry into the construction going on at the edge of the community park. A popular topic that came up quite often was food. We would be asked about popular places to eat in town, with some specifically looking for a certain type of food, such as seafood. Questions about traveling and directions were also very common. Many tourists needed help with directions to locations such as Port Alberni, Qualicum, and Tofino. Others asked about directions to certain stores, such as Canadian Tire, bookstores, and the closest grocery store. However, our most common question was, what should we ask you?
In the past months, uncommon but notable questions have been asked. We received a couple of questions asking about where to fish and buy fresh fish, also questions about where's the best burger in town and where you can go to buy a gluten-free burger. Others asked about names of mountains in the distance and when the tide will be out, as well as where to buy a kite and water shoes.
Feedback. There's been huge support for our roles as youth ambassadors. Both locals and tourists alike greatly appreciate our offered help and presence. Visitors praise how nice our beach is, saying it's much warmer compared to the west coast of the island. Many visitors enjoy Parksville's downtown feel, as it is not too busy. Several tourists have expressed interest in purchasing a property in Parksville, with some even asking us about our schools and winters. Tourists and locals have both conveyed enthusiasm regarding the potential development beside the beach club. However, there is still uncertainty regarding the proposal of a 16-story tower. Nonetheless, there is much interest in the condo market and potential for beachside businesses.
Not enough garbage cans and tiny recycling cages result in bottles being placed on or around garbage can, as well as unwanted garbage around downtown. Not many people feel comfortable along the Island Highway as cars drive far past the speed limit. We have gotten many complaints that are directed for the city, so there should be a number posted for any complaints or issues. Also, we have noticed many lost items along the beach, so there should be a lost and found for things like that. And we have gotten a lot of people, mostly elderly, asking for more seating along the boardwalk.
Further feedback. Other pieces of feedback we received were that the dog leash policy should be enforced more. One woman told us her friend was nearly attacked. Some people think there should be more events and activities on the beach, and there is actually broad support for more hiking trails in Parksville. We've noted from multiple people that there is a lack of food options in the community park and that the lot beside the beach club is an eyesore. We've also heard both tourists and locals complaining about the placement of our current visitor center, wishing it was downtown for a more central and walkable location.
In total, we visited 134 different businesses. In addition to offering each business our distinctive PDBA decals and maps, we also connected with business owners and verified their own special Parksville downtown website listing to ensure all information is clear and concise. The vast majority of businesses visited engaged with us positively and either took maps or needed a listing update. Similarly, we were given the opportunity to connect with new downtown businesses.
Our observations. Dozens of tourists have asked us about Tidal Treasures, as it does not specify the running dates on its plaque. The field beside the Family Resource Association continues to be used as a dumping ground for unwanted items from carts to chairs to smashed computers. There is still a continued and keen interest in the lot beside the beach club. The info session was not promoted enough, as there is still an obvious lack of knowledge that a development has even been proposed. There's apprehension amongst many elderly people, while others, including younger and middle-aged people, recognize the benefits of such a development for the local economy, residential enjoyment, city beach connectivity, and a solidified Parksville identity. Alcohol at the beach has been constant throughout the summer, with bottles left at the base of garbage bins. Graffiti is also a huge issue throughout downtown and at the beach. The gazebo near the beach club was damaged during the summer, with images that have been spotted around Parksville. We also noticed bylaw compliance vehicles driving down by the beach nearly every day, which is an improvement compared to last year and very appreciated by the public. We've met with the Friday VIU students a number of times, and it seems that their booth has been quite popular.
There is a blank directional sign located where the Island Highway crosses with the Alberni Highway. It's supposed to list food and lodging options, but lists nothing. Notice quite a few pedestrians on different occasions cutting across the highway rather than using the crosswalks. And in spite of the PDBA funded litter removal program, we encountered lots of litter throughout downtown and the community park, pointing to the need for more garbage bins in Parksville. The beachside information plaques are well used, well loved by all ages. There is a quite large group of people who greatly enjoy the beachside labyrinth, including some who visit Parksville solely for it. Someone even asked us when we get our labyrinth back when talking about the Arbutus Point construction. The pop-up library on the beach is well used. One man has donated nearly 100 books this summer alone. We've also noticed throughout the course of the summer that there is a big shortage in bike racks down at the beach, forcing cyclists to lock their bikes around trees and fences.
Summer end thoughts and reflections. Partaking in the Youth Ambassador program this year was an amazing opportunity and experience. Not only was the work incredibly fulfilling by acting as a mobile visitor center, but we also used the summer as both a learning and growing experience.
Being able to connect with people and businesses was an incredible portion of this job and gave us the ability to see the inner workings of our community. Thanks again for listening, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you very much. You know, we on council, I think I speak for everybody on council, we look forward to these reports over the last few years because it gives us an insight that we don't normally. We all go to the beach and we all use the beach, but we're not there all of the time in the summertime like you are. And I think that this year, before I turn it over to council for questions, I think that this year it's extremely important because we've got a budget discussions coming up in October. I'm looking forward to getting a copy of your report so I can go over it and discuss it with my fellow councillors. And on September the 18th, Vancouver Island University is coming to present the first findings of their community park master plan. And I'll be certainly referring to your document as they give us their comments with regards to what they see for the future of the community park. And I'm sure, listening to you tonight, that there's going to be quite a bit of synergy with those two reports. So once again, thank you very much. Now I'm going to turn it over to members of council for their comments. Members of council, who goes first? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you so much for your presentation. It is one of my highlights. I've been the youth liaison in council for several years, and I was at Bolinas today speaking with one of the teachers as well. So what grades are you in this year?
Yeah.
We're both in grade 12 this year, so
Awesome.
graduating after.
Awesome. So what do you talked a little bit about so much of what you've learned and everything. Do you already have expectations for after grade 12?
Well, I am so enthused about university. My big plan is to go to UBC or maybe even Waterloo to study sciences, and I'll keep it short so I don't talk my head off, but you can.
I'm looking to go into videography. Haven't really been looking into schools really that much, kind of still trying to see what I'm looking for, but anything along that lines is probably what I'll be going into. So.
Very awesome. Later on in our agenda, we have a report in regards to youth engagement initiatives, and that's why I was at Bolinas today. So I'm really hoping that you can read over our agenda a little bit. Yeah, that's my little plug. Sorry, Your Worship.
I'm actually planning on staying the entire meeting just for that.
And so that maybe we can move forward with some more youth representation and coming forward to council, because, as I said, this is one of my highlights. Thank you.
Councillor Veal.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'd like to add my thanks. Thanks very much for your presentation. I've taken quite a few notes. It's really quite interesting. I was curious about the interactions that you've had with the businesses in the downtown, because I can imagine that running a business takes up a lot of energy, and it may be challenging at times for business owners to interact with one another and with their association. Did you find that through the program there were businesses that became more active in terms of signing on to the PDBA website or learning information about the association and about other businesses? Can you comment about that?
Yeah, our reception was very positive, and for most of the businesses we went to, they were very appreciative of us coming around just to kind of feel like they're part of the community. A lot of businesses, especially professional businesses, they were really appreciative that we came by with their listing on the Parksville Downtown website, because I guess in our role, they tend to think we focus more on retail and kind of tourist attractions, but we're with the PDBA, so no one's left out. Yeah, so they were really happy to know that they weren't just forgotten.
Vertically challenged. We did notice a spike in visitors to our website, which has been completely redone and relaunched at the end of July. Much more mobile friendly. But their activity in the community does drive people to our website, which is one of the program's goals.
Does council have questions? Councillor Oates.
Just a question of clarification. You had a pie chart up there earlier that represented the percentages of the visitors to the park. And I think the number one, the biggest pie chart was like 72 or 73% of the people were from Alberta. Does that represent people that you actually spoke with, or does that represent people that you think are visitors to the park?
How we did it, we would do a lot of it through license plates. So say we'd be walking down the beach and we'll see an Albertan license plate or Saskatchewan. We'll write that down like they visit here. So that doesn't take into account we won't nick down every BC license plate, and only the people we actually talk to from BC will nick down. So just to clarify, yeah.
Thank you, and thanks for a great job. I've seen you guys around all summer. It was good to see. Thank you.
Anybody else have questions for the delegation? I hope that you can come on the 18th. It's on a Monday night at 6 o'clock, and we'll be having a presentation from Vancouver Island University, and we'll be looking at your report as they speak to us, and we'll see what kind of synergy there is with all of that. Thank you very, very much. Thank you for the work you've done this summer. Very much appreciated.
Thanks again. Thanks, guys.
The next delegation is the Guardians of the Mid-Island Estuaries, an update on the Goose Management, and we have John Cooper and Tim Claremont. Welcome. Are you alone, John, or is Tim not here?
Yes, I'm sorry. Tim was very apologetic about missing the meeting tonight. He was tied up with travel from Alberta and didn't get back to the island in time. So, unfortunately, he's not here. Thank you, Your Worship, councillors and staff for having me to present at the meeting tonight. My name is John Cooper. I'm the president of the Guardians of Mid-Island Estuaries Society. It's a group of biologists and other local volunteers working to preserve estuary environments in the Oceanside area and elsewhere on eastern Vancouver Island. I'm here tonight to talk to you about the activities that we have been conducting over the last couple of years on management of Canada geese with the wonderful and amazing support of the City of Parksville. I think and other local and regional governments. I think we've made some great strides. So I'd just like to run through the last couple of years with this presentation. Now, how does this work? Just like to I don't want to go over old ground. We've presented here before and why we're interested in geese, but I just wanted to run through a brief history of the impacts of Canada geese and some of the management that's been ongoing in the last few years. So there were no Canada geese on eastern Vancouver Island back in the 70s and 80s, and since then in the Oceanside area there's increased to a population of about 1,500 birds in our local area. During that time, the damage to really vital estuary ecosystems, particularly the Carriage beds and the other vegetation that provides incredibly important habitat for many species of fish, especially salmonids, fry rearing and smolt rearing habitat, has been damaged and degraded by grubbing and foraging by Canada geese. And in addition to that, we've all experienced the fouling of beaches, city parks, playgrounds, school grounds. Has just been incredible in the last 15 years. So in about 2002, some of the members of the Guardians started to try to do something to alleviate the issue of too many Canada geese and impacts on estuaries. We started to add eggs in the Oceanside area to reduce the birth rate of young birds into the population. We coalesced as a group in 2008, formed an NGO, and used that as a platform to further our attempts to address the impacts of geese on the estuaries. In 2011, we obtained some very generous funding from the City of Parksville and also from the Regional District of Nanaimo, Ducks Unlimited, Canadian Wildlife Service, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and we launched a 4-year research program into what was going on with Canada geese and why. And at the end of that program, we published a management strategy, which was a science-based publication, which eventually convinced the Environment Canada and the province of British Columbia that what we were doing was correct, and allowed us to do some of the activities we've done the last couple of years. So the focus of our work in 2016 was addling of eggs in the Englishman, Willow, and Nanu's Bay areas in the estuaries. Goose population reduction program in Parksville. We conducted some restoration experiments and activities in the Englishman and Willow, and we led with the terrific help from the City of Parksville of forming a Vancouver Island Regional Canada Goose Working Group. So some of the results from 2016, egg addling, we had 72 nests in the Englishman River estuary. We addled 24 nests in the Little Qualicum and 14 nests in Nanu's Bay. Big part of our program in 2016 was the population reduction project that we conducted in the Englishman estuary. And we were able to remove 484 Canada geese from the Englishman population in the summer of 2016, fully supported by Canadian Wildlife Service and the province of British Columbia. We involved local First Nations. We had terrific support from, moral support from Nanu's First Nations, although they weren't directly involved. We had terrific support from the Comox First Nations to carry out this program. All of these birds were rounded up in the estuary and then transported to another site where they were processed, led by our First Nations team. And all of the meat from those birds was used for traditional food use by the Comox First Nations. Some of the other results from that particular program were evident in the reduced number of problems in the parks with goose droppings, and I was very interested to hear in the presentation just previously that there wasn't a single complaint about goose droppings in Parksville Community Park. We started to work on some restoration projects in the Little Qualicum and Englishman River Estuary. On the right, the photograph is of the Little Qualicum. We've erected some fencing. It just shows you what we can do when we can exclude Canada geese from the estuary. The muddy areas have been grubbed and eroded by foraging by Canada geese, and the fenced-in areas, we had terrific regrowth of Carriage beds. On the left, the photograph, it's not a very good photograph, but that's just an area that we fenced off in Englishman, and we've started trials with transplanting Carriage, and we're having really, really good success of regrowth of Carriage within the exposed areas. 2016, we sort of led with terrific support from the City of Parksville again, especially Debbie Comas and Deb Tardif and others, and other regional local governments, trying to develop a coordinated strategy to deal with overabundant Canada geese on Vancouver Island. The focus of the work in 2017 was more egg addling in Englishman, Little Qualicum, and Nanoose. It's a dangerous job. Often are attacked by some of these geese. Plan to have a goose population reduction program in the Little Qualicum and the Campbell River, more restoration at Englishman and Little Qualicum, and trying to firm up the Vancouver Island Regional Canada Goose Working Group. This slide is an extremely interesting slide to me. It's the results from our 2017 egg addling. The gray line is at the bottom is Nanoose Bay. You can see over the years numbers have remained fairly constant. The Little Qualicum is the orange line. In 2010 there were 45 nests in the Little Qualicum. It's down to 21 this year. That is probably a combination of the addling efforts that we have been doing that prevents input into the local population. And also those birds we found out during our research program are subject to a fair bit of hunting pressure. So a combination of mortality of adults and lack of input of young birds has dropped the population by more than one half. The big event was in the Englishman, where after the reduction of local birds in 2016, we went from about over 70 pairs of birds nesting in the Englishman down to only 26. So this is a significant result, meaning there were many fewer Canada geese in the estuary this year. We noticed immediately that Carriage was starting to regrow outside of our exclosures, probably because of the reduced grazing pressure on that vegetation. So this gives us great hope that if we can keep numbers of birds down, we'll be able to eventually restore the estuary and to bring it back to some of its former glory. We conducted a population reduction program in the Little Qualicum. We removed 100 Canada geese. All of those birds were again processed, and the meat was taken by the Comox First Nations for use as traditional food. And then we had a program in Campbell River where we removed 950 Canada geese over a 3-day period with very close cooperation of the Wewakam First Nations and the Comox First Nations folks as well. All of those birds were processed. All the meat was saved and used by the First Nations people. A lot of it went to the Tribal Journeys feasts that were held this summer in Campbell River. And what we have done with involving the First Nations has been incredibly important to the success of these programs, that we can demonstrate the use of the birds that are removed, and they are really integral to this, the whole operation, from the capture to through the processing and the public relations as well. This is not a very good picture either, but it shows some of the carracks starting to regrow outside of exclosures in Englishman. That is a muddy channel that was completely denuded of carracks by geese. We erected a fence, and it regrew inside the fence, and then this year it's actually started to grow outside of the fence, and that's happening at various places within both of the Little Qualicum and the Englishman River Estuary. So to be entirely successful or partially successful in this process of trying to reduce Canada goose population in Vancouver Island, we have to have a cooperative effort throughout Vancouver Island. And there has been a great number of stakeholders interested in this concept, led by the City of Parksville, but also involving other local governments and regional governments, Nanaimo, Central Saanich, Qualicum Beach, even Powell River, various First Nations groups and NGOs like Project Watershed and Comox are extremely concerned with all the restoration efforts being destroyed by overabundant Canada geese. So at this point, a draft memorandum of understanding has been developed and is being discussed by the various stakeholders. And 2017, the City of Parksville presented a resolution, as you know, at the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities to encourage the coordinated efforts to reduce population of Canada geese. And apparently it was very well received, and this is extremely, extremely promising. The next meeting of the working group is October 5th, and the plan is to finalize this MOU and move forward with a coordinated strategy. And the only way we can reduce the population in Parksville, Qualicum ourselves, but we have to have a coordinated strategy throughout eastern Vancouver Island. Otherwise, there will be infilling of birds coming from other places. So, and a lot of different communities seem to be coming on board. So, some of the additional work we did in 2017, we did some summer molt counts, and we had about 800 geese roughly in the Oceanside area. That seemed to be well down from previous years. Possibly because of some of the population reductions that we have done in the various communities. We did an aerial survey of geese just to show you some of the scale of the issue. There was we had about 8,000 geese we counted from aerial and ground-based surveys. Funding for these aerial surveys was forthcoming from other agencies that we were able to leverage our funding from the City of Parksville and the Regional District of Nanaimo. But there are geese up and down the island, and if we have a coordinated effort to try to deal with that, we may have a chance of success here in Parksville and elsewhere. And winter counts are way down this year. We only had 443 geese, and we had been getting, over 1,100, 1,500 geese over other winter counts. So we seem to be having some effect. I can't take credit for all of it, but numbers are on a decline locally. 2018 will be the third year of our program here. We'd like to conduct additional population reductions, probably in the Parksville area, probably in the Englishman, possibly in Craig Bay, and perhaps in Comox. We'd like to continue the egg addling at the various estuaries, continue restoration, and continue really pushing for the coordinated program with the working group. And just to thank you to our funders, and we'd like to thank the staff of the City of Parksville for all of their support for our efforts.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I see Councillor Patterson had her hand up first, so Councillor Patterson, you go ahead, and Councillor Powell.
Thank you, John, for your presentation. Numbers don't lie, and they're very much appreciated. When you talk about 2018 moving forward, what would you consider a good number of either addling or sorry, I can't think of the proper terminology. No.
Well, during our research project from 2011 through about 2014, we collared a lot of geese. We monitored where they went, where they were. We had returns of bands from various places, and we determined that the geese that live mostly in Parksville, in the Englishman and surrounding areas. Didn't matter how much addling we did. We addled every nest in the Englishman, virtually every nest for years. And we were getting over 70 pairs there. And we were having lots of birds coming in the summer for this molt migration. So really addling is something we need to continue because it works in concert with other factors in other areas to reduce numbers. But it doesn't work here in Parksville. So when we did the reduction in 2016 and removed almost 500 birds, we had an immediate effect on a lot of different things related to geese. You know, the lack of or reduction in the amount of issues with geese on parks and playgrounds and complaints from the public. And I hear this anecdotally. I see it myself personally. I have kids. I'm down at the park. I mean, I play on the sports fields, and then the immediate our main focus as the Guardians was the quality of the environment and the estuary environment, and we're seeing an immediate effect there where, gee, there's plants are growing where they weren't growing before because they were being eaten. So that tells me that this is what we need to do and what we can do, and it will eventually result in some success. The numbers. That's open for discussion.
What would you consider a safe geese population in our area?
A safe?
Well, that doesn't have a negative effect on our environment and on the grasslands. And I know it's kind of a tough question. We've gone from thousands of birds into the 400 or 500 range. So we're never going to be able to stop the Canada geese from residing here permanently.
No, and that would not be, really a feasible
at all
to do. I think we have to reduce the population further. There's still a lot of geese here. I'd like to reduce it another maybe 50% from what it is now.
Okay, thank
and
you.
I think if we could do that, I think we'll have a real good chance of restoring the estuary and reducing other problems caused by geese. And if we can do that in all the communities that have this problem, I think we have a really good shot at eventually getting to the point where they're not as big an issue as they are now.
Councillor Patterson? Councillor Powell, and then Councillor Burton.
Thank you, Worship. I've been on council the whole time that you've come to council, and I have to say I've watched the progress and the frustration and the decimation of the estuary, and when you came forward with the ultimate solution, anyways, the culling of the Canada geese, I fully support it. And if we need to go further to say half the number that we have, I fully support that as well. I think that the damage they did to our estuary, when I first saw the pictures, I thought it was irreversible. And I want to commend you and your organization on the work and your stick-to-itiveness, because had you not done that, we wouldn't be where we are today, and I want to thank you for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Burton.
I'd like to thank you also for the work that you do. We've gone from the machine that used to go through the community park to scoop up goose poop. That's not necessary anymore. the events that I'm involved with in the community park are much enhanced by the lack of degrading by the geese. I spend a lot of time in the estuary, and I have noticed the huge change. And I look at the health of the estuary is going to reflect back to the health of the whole river, and I think it's a great work that you do, and I thank you for it.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Beale and then Councillor Salter.
Thank you. I too would like to add my thanks for the vision and the goal and the work that's been done. I'm also thinking, you've mentioned earlier that having the healthy estuary benefits the fish population, and also migratory birds. I'm also thinking, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but having a healthy estuary also helps us mitigate changes with water when we do have higher tides and the like. I imagine it can hold water better there as well. Is that correct?
Well, that's a tricky question with sea level rise and all that, but the estuary is the most probably most valuable habitat that we have for fish and wildlife compared to anything else. So
I'm also wondering what role the work that's being done down there, I know this focuses on the goose management, but is also the work that's being done down there to open up the water flow, is that also going to contribute to the restoration of the estuary, and the work that's being done in conjunction with Mid-Vancouver Island Habitat Enhancement Society and naturalists, and it's just so great to see all the groups working together to improve that environmental area.
I'm not directly involved with that particular project, but we the Guardians fully support it. Any attempt to restore the estuary to a more natural state by removing that berm, I believe, and increasing more flow, tidal flow in exchange with fresh water and other things that they're doing is hopefully will work out well.
Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, yeah, I want to thank you for your presentation as well. And I know that this is difficult because it's being controversial. And, we're never going to get everybody agreeing with it. However, I guess what I could say is I am a farmer. I raise chickens and I've raised turkeys for food. It's no different raising them up and taking them to the abattoir than collecting these birds and using them for food as well. So, and I think it's a great way to take care of a problem that was created by humans in the first place. So, people brought them here. We're using them to hunt. Then they took off, and now we're having to deal with the end result of that. So I think you've done a really good job, and I guess there's a little more to do, but hopefully we can get it under control so that it does stop destroying the environment and creating those problems.
Thank you. I can't overstate how important it is to involve the First Nations groups, and we've had terrific support, particularly from the Wewakam and the Comox. Hopefully with more support or interaction with the Nanus. But we were stymied for years with what to do with the birds if we did remove them, and it was not a very satisfactory outcome with what can you do with these birds. But the First Nations people have that legal authority to harvest wildlife for food, and that has worked out extremely well. And they have actually, I've eaten quite a bit of it that they've prepared over the last couple of years, and it's become quite popular in their communities. So that's almost like farming.
Well, I want to thank you also. I want to go back to 2011. Councillor Powell talked about a little bit of the history of this. And I remember in 2011, I remember very vividly you're coming for money from the council. I think it was $5,000 to carry on these studies, And myself and a few other councillors were quite irritated at the time because we knew the number of birds. We knew that the estuary was looking like a moonscape, and we sort of questioning why wait. But I'm glad we waited, because after that was done, I got some pretty interesting phone calls. Luckily, I didn't get any visits because I won't go any further than that. I have a why is not the News First Nations and the Qualicum First Nations signing on to the MOU? Is there a reason for that?
Well, we have engaged with them, and they have been at meetings, and they have expressed interest. It's just been very difficult to actually get together with them and get them together with other people. We're working on that, and that is one of our goals for this year and next year, is to get them intimately involved in the program.
Now, is one of the reasons why there's few geese in the park, are the migratory geese coming back? Because in the evening now, when the sun goes down, over my property, I have these geese flying by on their way to the beach.
Where do you live?
I just live over on Bay Avenue.
I know there's 500 geese feeding in the fields at Church Road. Grain was planted there, and a lot of them are going to the French Creek estuary in the evening, but some of them are coming over this way.
Are they migratory, or are they permanent residents?
Well, I'm hoping they're migratory. It's a little early for the migrants, though. So they're birds that they might all be in that field, because that grain field is a really good food source for them. So I'm hoping that's almost all of our birds in that one field.
One more anecdote from me, because I go back a long ways with this. I think as far back as 2002. But I remember somebody coming to a meeting and explaining that if you put cougars hide behind big logs and big rocks. If you put these big rocks, the geese will be frightened and they won't come there. And somebody, I don't know who it was, but somebody said, no, they're a lot smarter than that. They know they know when their bitter enemies are around, they don't come. But if you just put a rock or a log, they're going to come in groves, and they did. So, just a little anecdote. Thank you very much once again. We look forward to more reports and seeing you from time to time. You know, the estuary is very important to us. It's probably one of the more important ecosystems, and I agree with you. In the studies that I've read, it's very important for fish habitat, and that was a big factor that I think with you and others, we've accomplished that success. So thank you once again.
Well, thank you, Your Worship, and councillors, and we'll hopefully see you again in the near future.
Turn off the microphone. Okay, members of council, moving right along. We're into reports now. Item 4A. I need a mover and a seconder for the consideration of proceeding with notice for a development variance permit at 429 Craig Street to relax a setback in order to facilitate an accessory carriage house. Councillor Salter, Councillor Burden. Okay, Mr. Russell, over to you. Would you please give us the background on this issue?
Sure. If I may, Your Worship, basically it's an existing accessory building that has a carriage house suite within it. The current property owner is trying to legitimize the siting of the building as an accessory carriage house. In order to proceed with that, a relaxation to both the rear lot line and the southern interior lot line are required, as the setbacks for accessory carriage houses are more strict at 3 meters compared to a normal accessory building at 1.5. So they're requesting a relaxation from the rear lot line from 3 meters to 2.4 meters, and from the southern interior lot line from 3 meters to 1.8 meters. And this evening we're asking to proceed with notice so that we can notify property owners and tenants within 50 meters of the subject property.
Questions for Mr. Russell? Councillor Burden.
So this is a building that's being converted to a carriage house. I guess this is a good thing in my mind, in as much as it's creating more potential residential occupation without changing the character of the community that it is in. And I guess my question is, why the difference between an accessory building and a carriage house? Why can't we find a way to conform that so that more people, if they have these accessory buildings available to them, can convert them to housing so that we can decrease the housing issues that we're facing as a community?
If your mayorship to Councillor Burton, my understanding of the origin of the difference in setback is there's a belief that there's a different impact in a building that's occupied more consistently as a residence versus like a garden shed or something that has less occupation. So that would be my understanding of why they were developed that way. It's certainly council's prerogative to change regulations if it feels that there's another direction for the kind of regulations to proceed with. To date, we've had a couple amendments to the existing carriage housing regulations that have actually further restricted some of their siting requirements at council's behest.
Follow up, Mr. Burton? Councillor Burton? Okay. Any further questions for Mr. Russell? Seeing none, I'm going to call the vote. I'm going to take the two motions together. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. Okay, Mr. Russell, you're on once again. I need a mover and a seconder for the consideration of a development permit for commercial residential mixed-use development at 171 Jensen Avenue. Do I have a mover and a seconder? By Councillor Oates, and seconded by Councillor Beal. Mr. Russell, if you would again, please.
If a mayorship for council consideration is a development permit for a mixed commercial residential building at 171 Jensen Avenue West. This is a completely different building than what is being previously proposed on the subject property. The building features approximately 122 square meters or 14 square feet of commercial space on the first floor, with 16 residential units proposed on the second and third floor. No variances are proposed as part of this application, and is in general conformance with the zoning bylaw.
Any questions for Mr. Russell on this particular item? Okay, I have a mover and a seconder. I'm going to move all three motions. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Russell. Now we're over to Mr. Figuera. Renz Road half upgrade approval for construction works. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Beal. Mr. Figuera, would you please give us the background on this item?
If I may, Your Worship, before Council is a request to increase the funding for Renz Road half road upgrade. That would be the east half of Renz Road, and authorize staff to award the construction of the Renz Road half upgrade up to $282,835 plus tax to Low-Car Industries. There's a number of factors that support the recommendations and staff's opinion. One of them is that Low-Car Industries is currently responsible for building the west half of Renz Road, and for logistical and safety reasons, because of the geometry, only building half of the road is very challenging and in my opinion, not practical. It's an opportunity for us to partner with the construction company there and build both sides of the road at the same time. Staff have obtained a quote from Low-Car, and we consider in the current market that it represents good value. So we're satisfied the cost is reasonable. Staff have also identified that there's available money in the budget provided that Renz Road pedestrian improvement project is delayed and reconsidered. The reason why we put that out there is it turns out that the Cedar Ridge development there, subdivision, they needed to do some work on Renz Road from their development down to Hearst, and that was the alignment of the pedestrian improvements as well. So some of the work for the pedestrian improvement project has been done as a result of the Cedar Ridge, so we need to really reconsider that project anyways and recost it and reprice it. So I think if we push it to 2018, we'll get a better number for that. And if we top up the money for the west side of Renz Road and build it at the same time as the east side, then I think that makes a lot of sense. So our recommendations are as per the report.
Questions for Mr. Figuera? Councillor Burden.
So you're taking the money that was designated for the pedestrian improvement project and putting it into the additional funding required for the construction of the east side of Renz Road. And I guess my question is, will you be looking for new money in the 2018 budget to complete the pedestrian upgrade?
If I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Burden, we'll be taking some of that money, not all of it. And then when we reevaluate, we'll see what is required to complete the pedestrian improvements next year. So we won't be taking all the money, but some of it. Until we reevaluate it, and we won't know exactly how much we need for the pedestrian. We're currently working on that for the pedestrian improvement project.
Any further questions for Mr. Figuera? Councillor Salter.
Maybe I misunderstood, but I thought you had something already. I thought you already had a number for the pedestrian improvement project for this year.
If I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Salter, yeah, we have a number there, but some of that work has been done related to the Cedar Ridge upgrade. They needed to, basically they needed to upsize the storm sewer from their development all the way down to Hearst, which required them to widen Renz Road, widen the shoulder on Renz Road, which would be, the widening of the shoulder would be part of that pedestrian work that we had planned. So some of that work has been done. Some of the money that's identified there, some of that work has been done for this year.
So could I just follow up, just so that I'm clear? So, so now that has happened with the widening of the road, then you don't know what the cost will be in 2018 for the pedestrian piece.
If I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Salter, through the 2018 budgeting process, we will have a number available at that time as to what it would cost to finish off the pedestrian improvements on Renz.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Mr. Figuera? Councillor Oates.
Yes, yes, Your Worship. I think we should support this motion. I think that there's a lot of efficiencies to be derived by doing it now as opposed to doing it later. I think the logistics of having two different contractors in there trying to work on the same road is a nightmare. I also think about the residents that are adjacent to the development there, have half the road this year done and then another half done another year. It sounds like the costs are about where they would be in the ballpark if we were doing it down the road. And it also sounds to me like the pedestrian improvement project may be reduced as a result of some of the work, if I understand correctly, as a result of some of the work that's currently underway under Renz Road. So I see this as an opportunity to reduce our capital expenditure for this entire project by doing this now as opposed to waiting and doing it later. So I would encourage Council to approve the requested funding.
Thank you, Councillor Oates. Any further comments, questions for Mr. Figuera? Seeing none, I have a mover and a seconder. I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. Next report is the 2017 Fall Grant and Aid applications. Ms. Kaler, would you please give us the background on this issue? But before you do, I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Salter, seconded by... Pardon me? Seconded by Councillor Oates. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under the provisions of the city's grant and aid application policy, the city may provide direct financial assistance to community groups and organizations for events and projects that will benefit the citizens and visitors of the municipality. The 2017 budget for this purpose is $5,000. The deadline for the fall intake was Friday, September 1st, and the purpose of this report is to establish a grant and aid select committee to review the 6 applications that were received by this deadline. The amount for the fall intake that has been budgeted is $2,500, and currently the requests total $6,700. And recommendations are per the agenda.
Thank you very much. And once again, somebody's going to have to multiply the loaves and fishes. We have a request for $6,700, and we have $2,500 to dole out. And I'm very pleased to appoint Councillors Teresa Patterson and Councillor Leanne Salter to the Grant and Aid Select Committee. Report back to us. Well, okay. All in favor of the motion. Thank you, Council. I got ahead of myself. I saw that $6,700 for $2,500 requires some magic. Okay, once again, Mrs. Keller, the Royal Canadian Legion Mount Arrowsmith Pacific Branch number 9049 encroachment agreement at 146 Hearst West Avenue. This is a long-standing agreement that we have. I need a mover and a seconder for the two recommendations. Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Oates. Mrs. Kaler, once again, can we have the background, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is to obtain Council's authorization to renew the existing agreement, which permits a 1.2-meter encroachment onto the municipal road right-of-way at 146 Hearst Avenue West for the existing Royal Canadian Legion's building. As you mentioned, this is an existing agreement, but we have made significant modifications to modernize the agreement. It was originally entered into in 1982, and we have added some requirements to clarify the expectations of evacuating the area should the city require the road right-of-way in the future, and also to provide additional insurance and liability reduction strategies for the city moving forward. And recommendations are per the agenda.
Questions for Mrs. Keeler? Fairly straightforward. Long-standing agreement with sewer distance. Councillor Oates.
The changes that were made to modernize the agreement, I think was the words there. Is the Legion okay with those changes? It's not like we're changing this agreement and putting it to them and saying now this is it, is it? Or has there been any discussions about the impact on those changes that have been made, and are the Legion willing to sign it as is?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Oates, we notified the Legion that this was coming before Council, and we did not receive any concerns or items from them. They were aware that this was coming forward, and the intent of the agreement has not changed. There's no additional cost for them. We had our legal counsel and the Municipal Insurance Agency review the wording, and that was explained to them. So at this point, I'm not aware that they have concerns, but we could follow up if council wishes.
Councillor Oates?
So the Legion was provided a copy of the revised wording?
They were notified that this was on the agenda, and they were provided a copy of the agenda, so the draft agreement is attached.
With the relationship I have with the president of the Legion, I'm sure that if there were any problems, I would have gotten a call. That's the way we work together. Okay. On that note, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Thank you. That is carried. Once again, Mrs. Kaler, this is your night. City of Parksville Youth Engagement Initiative, we have a recommendation that the report be received. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Beale. Mrs. Kaler, background, please, on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is to present Council with information on the current youth engagement strategies and seek direction as to whether additional actions need to be undertaken. The City actively encourages youth participation in civic events and has several official policies and objectives supporting the involvement of youth in city business. Council recently passed a resolution directing staff to discuss both options and costs for individuals or groups to act in a more formal role as a youth liaison to Council, providing a positive voice for youth in the community and communicating youth-specific priorities to Council. Recommendations are per the agenda, and the details in the report outline what we are already currently doing in the city.
Thank you. And just before I turn it over to Councillor Patterson, I wanted to inform Council that last week I had a visit from a teacher, grade 6 or grade 7 teacher in Springwood Elementary School, and they want to embark on the program that we've started with the Oceanside Middle School, I think, last year, in putting on a civics class where we have a mock council. and we invite the police chief and the fire chief. And the minute they meet the police chief and the fire chief, the mayor is cast aside and not bothered with, which is interesting. So, Councillor Patterson, would you please give us some comments and some insights from your perspective as council liaison to the youth group?
Thank you, Your Worship. As I mentioned earlier today, I met with one of the teachers, Bruce Richmond, who will be taking over for John Preston, which was the Civics Action Group. It's now kind of moved and expanded into the Rotary Interact type group because they're doing quite a bit of work under that umbrella and with the Parksville AM Rotary Club. So I wanted to give a little bit of feedback as far as that group goes. It's mentioned in the report some of the different engagements and everything that youth have done in the community, and it's really rewarding that Willow has stayed throughout this long council meeting to hear a little bit more about what we're recommending. My comments and everything, though, are school has just begun, and next week will be the first formal meeting of the youth civics that's kind of morphed into the Interact group. So I am on the agenda for that meeting, and I would kind of like to hold off on some of our recommendations. I'd like to table it at this point in time.
And tonight the report is just to be received, so if you'd be coming back to us with some recommendations, fine.
And next week, or our next council meeting, we also have the VIU students as well. So if at all possible, I'd like to come back at that point of time under new business. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Perfect.
Councillor Beal. You're finished? I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she made a motion.
Can we hold off and ask for any questions before I make the formal motion to table?
Sure. Okay. Any questions?
Oh, from our CAO, I've been recommended that we can just bring back, so I'm not tabling.
Okay.
So further discussion, please.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Beal.
I'd just like to thank Councillor Patterson for her comments because myself, I enjoyed reading the report, but I was very curious about the level of input that we have from you. So I was curious about that from our CAO and other staff. To what degree do we have input at this point in time, be it from high school students, be it from VIU representatives, be it from also the school district has trustees, including one of the school trustees is involved with the Interact group, and also we happen to have a school trustee, and they might meet in this very building, they do, who is one of the youngest school trustees to have ever been elected. So it just seems like we have opportunities right here in the building, and I just wondered how much input from youth or those directly involved with helping youth develop leadership has there been when making this report?
I guess you've spent a few minutes in a classroom also, haven't you? Okay, any further comments? You're looking at me, Mrs. Comas.
Was that a question, Your Worship? Oh, okay. So the involvement that we have with youth is more project-specific than it is on a regular, ongoing basis.
Follow-up? Sure, go ahead.
One question and also a comment. I noticed that some of the activities that were mentioned, some of the interactions with youth, one that was referred to was a public works open house, and I've got to say, as an administrator, a former administrator of a school, that was always the absolute highlight, raved about. The best field trip ever was to go and visit, see the public works buildings and have that information. I was curious, some of the examples such as grade grade 5s or grade, for instance, the Nanoose Elementary leadership class or the Springwood Elementary School students visiting things. Who initiates those? Is it a two-way street, as in do we put out information to the school district to invite schools to get involved, or is it coming from the schools? I was just wondering.
I was contacted by the civics teacher at the Nanoose Elementary, and we started from there, and it's gone very, very well. They've been so pleased by it, and then the students. We get on an average of about 35 to 40 students that come for the entire session, and it's quite interesting. And I might add that one of the reasons why the police chief is much more popular than the mayor is he carries a gun, and at the end of the session he gives everybody free tickets to go to Dairy Queen. So I don't stand a chance. I'd never get a vote from those kids. So anyway. Okay, the motion is to receive, so we've got a mover and a seconder. I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Thank you. That is carried. Yes, Councillor Oates. We'll have a seconder for that. Thank you. Second, Mr.
Worship, I'd like to speak on that. I think it's time for us to take the initiative to put our hand out and say, "Come see us." We've talked about the desire for us to have some input from youth. I'm not sure that we're ready to designate a seat on council for the youth. I'm not as ambitious as the school board. But I do think that there's definitely opportunities here where the youth can be engaged, and based on what I read in the report, this may be a format that's has more of an appetite for the students. They may not wish to be regular attendees at council, but they certainly do want to have the council may wish to consult with them on issues where we feel that the youth-related matters and their voice would be something worth for us considering. So I think that going back, having Councillor Patterson and go back to this group and talking about their appetite for participating in such a project is a solid indication by the City of Parksville that we're serious about engaging youth in our process.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions? Councillor Salter.
All right. So it was my understanding that Councillor Patterson wanted to table this, and then she said, "Well, we'll just take it as received." So I would like to speak to the liaise, and I would just like to know what was it that you were hoping for tonight, because it was my understanding it was just now to go to be received. So and you wanted to speak to the students and then come back and we would discuss it. That was what I thought, but I could be wrong.
I think that, if I may, I think that what Councillor Oates brought up was in line with what Councillor Patterson. Anyway, I'll let Councillor Patterson answer.
That's correct, Your Worship. I do support Councillor Oates' motion going forward, and that I would bring it to the next meeting next Wednesday, and that at Bolinas, and then hopefully with some representation from the news in attendance, that maybe we can also have some other interest from that group that is still youth, but under the 25-year mark that's recommended in the report.
Okay, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Thank you. That is carried unanimously. All right, we're getting, slowly but surely, we're getting there, Council. The 2018 permissive taxation exemption applications, and we have 5 recommendations. Mrs. Comas, I can take them all together. I need a mover and a seconder for the 5 recommendations. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Patterson and seconded by Councillor Oates. I'm going to ask Mrs. Kaler to give us the background, and then we'll go for questions from Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Community Charter grants the authority to City Council to provide annual permissive tax exemptions to organizations that meet the criteria stipulated in the policy and in the regulations. If council wishes to do this, the appropriate bylaw must be adopted by October 31st of the preceding year. Therefore, for 2018's permissive tax exemptions, we must adopt the bylaw by October 31st, 2017. The City of Parksville has a permissive tax exemption applications policy, policy number 6.15, which provides guidance to council on evaluating permissive tax exemptions, and recommendations are per the agenda.
Okay, questions for Ms. Gillard? Councillor Salter.
So I do want to speak to that. I'm wondering if we could not take all 5 of them together, but remove number 4, the Parksville Lawn Bowling Club and the Island Corridor Foundation to be granted 100% permissive tax exemption for 2018.
Why don't you want to take all 5? I mean, I'm easy. I don't object.
Yeah.
Why would you want to do that?
And that's because I would like to bring forward a motion regarding that.
You'd like to what?
Bring a motion forward regarding that.
Regarding what item?
Number 4.
Number 4.
Yeah.
Okay. Council, you okay with that? We'll go one by one.
No, just
I
pull
think
number
all she's
4.
asking to do is sever the motion, right? And that's perfectly in order.
Okay. So, all those in favor of recommendation number 1? Opposed? That's carried. All those in favor of recommendation number 2? Opposed? That's carried. All those in favor of recommendation number 3? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, recommendation number 4, that the Parksville Lawn Bowling Club and the Island Corridor Foundation be granted 100% permissive taxation exemption for the 2018 calendar year. Councillor Salter, you want to speak to it?
I do want to speak to that. I would like to request that staff be directed to review the existing Parksville permissive tax exemption applications policy number 615 to provide options for council's consideration that would support greater flexibility and facilitate full exemptions for certain groups but not others.
Now, don't we, Mrs. Gomez?
So, Your Worship, yeah, my understanding is that Councillor Salter wanted us to do more research on the Island Corridor Foundation.
That's right. We have 100% tax exemption for the Island Corridor Foundation, and I think we would request that staff evaluate whether this exemption is still justified given the lack of a viable rail option within that corridor.
That's come up before. I don't think we have a choice, do we? I think we signed an agreement to do that up until 2021.
We have a bylaw, Your Worship, in place that grants them a permissive tax exemption for 10 years.
Yeah, but can we not look at reasons for the bylaw and look at possibly reviewing the existing bylaw and not modify that bylaw for that particular group? Because of the change that's occurred, there is no railway anymore. So it's my understanding that perhaps we're paying something for the use of the rail bed for our water, but other than that, there is no train on that track. There's nothing more. There's no more value to that rail bed than that. And yet they're receiving over $14,000 a year from the city. So if the city were to pay a cost for the rail for the water lines, that fair enough. But could we not review for that rather than continuing to do this and continuing going down that road? Because we can review our bylaws.
Your Worship, I don't believe that there is enough time for us to make any changes to that particular bylaw before the deadline for the permissive tax exemption would occur. So what I would suggest is that Council continue with the requirements set out in the bylaw for 2018, and arising out of that we conduct that research and provide that information, and then if there are changes to be made to that bylaw, we would be able to bring those forward. But we have to have this done by the end of October, so there's no way that we can do that.
That works for me, yeah.
Okay.
Councillor Burton? You had a comment?
Yeah, well, I certainly agree with Councillor Salter's premise with regard to the fact that we get no benefit out of the Island Corridor Foundation in theory. When you're doing your assessment, I would like to make sure that you consult with other communities who possibly have looked at the same. I believe that there's some southern Vancouver Island communities that have eliminated the tax exemption for Island Corridor Foundation with
one has.
some
Just
difficult collateral
Councillor
damage.
Burton? Just one has.
I just want to make sure that we make sure that that's included.
Yes.
This motion hasn't been seconded, so there can't be a discussion until we have a second.
Oh, okay. On number 4? So we had a mover. Were you the mover? No.
No, Your Worship, what is before council right now is recommendation number 4. And Councillor Salter is wanting to bring forward a motion of either referral or tabling to direct staff to undertake the additional research with respect to the bylaw and the Island Corridor Foundation and taxation. What I am suggesting is that you have a vote on number 4, and then arising out of that, Councillor Salter could then introduce her motion and ask staff to undertake.
And I'd also like to point out that if we were to do that tonight, I think we'd get into troubled waters. Okay, so I'm going to call I need a mover and a seconder for number 4. No, I don't. I need a vote. Okay, all those in favor of number 4? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Do you want to make a motion now?
Okay, so the same motion, that staff be directed to provide a report to council outlining the reasons for the bylaw, possibly looking at exemptions, and evaluating whether or not the exemption is still justified given the lack of viable rail option within the corridor, not for 2018 but for 2019.
Seconder for that? Councillor Burton? Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Okay. So, we are now at the point...
You just now need a vote on number 5.
Pardon me?
You just now need to vote on number 5, Your Worship. Recommendation number 5.
It's new business, and I'm going to go around the table. I'm going to start with Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship, but I've already discussed mine. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Oates?
A couple of things. One of the things, I was wondering if we might have a discussion at some point in time about the use of plastic bags in this town. I know it's come up in other jurisdictions there, and I don't know how. I'm a little bit reluctant to put forward a motion without giving advance notice to council, but I guess what I'm saying is that at sometime in the next little while, I wouldn't mind having a discussion at this table as to what our position is with respect to plastic bags versus paper bags. So a notice of a future discussion, unless somebody wanted to get into it tonight, I'd be fine with that too. I have another item. I have a motion, Your Worship. I move that staff include City of Parksville memorabilia as part of the 2018 budget package for council's consideration. I'll speak to that. Yeah, Your Worship, I find that we're sorely lacking in swag, for the want of a better term, and things to give out. We talked about youth engagement. We talked about things like we should have a little bit of something, a little bit of higher end to give out to pass around, and options. You know, besides a pen, maybe we could have something. I don't know, a pencil maybe. I don't know. All right, we could expand our horizons on that. But I think that Parksville in particular has an opportunity to brand itself. The Sand Dollar logo is very marketable, and I think we should be looking at some memorabilia for the city, so that when the mayor goes and visits with those school kids, he's able to perhaps leave something as a token of council's appreciation. And I know there's various times that we've had different things there, and I've attended at different events, and you sort of feel like the poor cousin when you have nothing to give. And I think that it's important for us to build our brand, and I think that we should. I think staff can look into certain types of memorabilia and bring back some budget considerations, and maybe then we can put our money where our mouth is.
Councillor Beal and Councillor Salter.
Thank you. I'd like to support this motion. Thank you, Councillor Oates, for bringing it forward, and I appreciate that there is a nod to a variety of items that would be available for different things. I was thinking of this not too long ago when I was at a 100th birthday, and it happened to be in a neighboring community, and the guest of honor did receive a very nice teacup from that particular community with a card, and I thought how lovely, and I wasn't sure if we had anything to that we would be able to bestow on someone in such an occasion. So thank you very much for bringing it forward. I will support this.
Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say I absolutely support this. When we went to Ottawa, as you know, I had got a whole pile of pens, and when we got there, I gave you a handful to give out, but that's all we had were our pens, and it would be nice to have, some swag that we could take with us, so that you're right. I was actually on the bus going back and forth to the convention center, and everybody was giving out stuff. They all had great stuff that they were giving out, and it would be really nice for us to have something that they could keep, and they would recognize Parksville.
I also agree. I think that's a very, very good idea, and maybe I can win some of the kids' votes from the police chief with his Dairy Queen coupons. Get a nice piece of swag. Okay, that's enough discussion. I want to call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. Anything else, Councillor Oates?
No, just thank you to council for supporting that initiative.
Okay. Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have one under new business, and I'm not sure everybody knows, but the 33rd Annual Parksville Chamber of Commerce Gala is happening in October, I believe October 14th. And in the past, we have purchased 15 gift cards from local eateries or restaurants in the area, and they create a certificate of auction for the Chamber of Commerce for their this year it's called the Chamber of Commerce Annual Blue Moon Gala and Auction. So I would like to make the motion. All right, I will let you go. I will let you escape. Sorry, I never gave you the heads up. In the past, the gift cards were valued at $20 each for a total cost of $300, and staff has suggested increasing the value of $25 to $25 per certificate for a total of $375. So the motion I'm making is that the city contribute $375 towards the Bon Appetit from the City of Parksville auction package for the 33rd Annual Parksville District Chamber of Commerce Gala and Auction, and that funding be provided from the council contingency.
How much money is in council contingency? All of it, right? Okay. Is that what we're talking about, increasing the gift certificates from $20 to $25? If we're going to move it, why don't we move it? Move it up to $40 or $50 or something like that. $25 gift certificate. It's got to be one of the smallest gifts that's given away down there that night.
Yeah. Well, that's why we're having a discussion. Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that the money that's bid on that is well worth what they get, and I think $375 is a good number.
You said $375, not $275. Yeah, okay. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. All right, I'm going to move to Councillor Beal, new business.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't actually have any new business, but I do have a question for Councillor Oates. Hello. I'm just wondering, following up on your request that we have a discussion at some point about plastic bags, if it might be helpful to invite someone here to give a presentation on that as well, or do you see such a need for that? Because I would have someone in mind. Sherry Plummer.
Well, I'm not necessarily, I think that it's important that if we're going to have a discussion about plastic bags or about anything, that we engage the public, and I was hoping that what I was doing was signaling to the public that we're going to have this discussion down the future, and those that are interested will approach us and make their views. It's a timely subject, and I think that the people will come out and to invite somebody to come and present on it. You're probably inviting focus groups that already have a pre-ordained agenda of where they want us to go with this. I'd rather, have a discussion with it, put it out there, raise up the flag pole, see who salutes, and go from there.
You're talking about a separate meeting, no, not a council meeting, but a separate meeting where we could discuss it at length with the public?
Now I'm regretting even talking about it. What I was signaling was that I think that at some point that there may come about before a motion before council to eliminate the use of plastic bags in the community. And before that happens, maybe we should have a discussion about it, or if the only way I can facilitate a discussion about it is to make that motion. I'm reluctant to make that motion at the end of a long meeting tonight and get a result that could have a major impact on the community without having proper consultation with the community. I did have a motion prepared to do it, but I'm reluctant to do that because I think it's a decision that perhaps needs more input from the community, and certainly more input from the business community, because it's those folks that we're going to be impacting the most. It would be a cost. It could possibly be a cost for businesses, and before we go unilaterally making changes to our bylaws or imposing something under the guise of being okay, I'll stop there. We need to be careful that our impacts on the business community and on the citizens in general are fully considered. So, yes.
Having seen the movie Plastic Ocean, I'd look forward to it. Councillor Burton, do you want to add something to the discussion?
I do. It's actually a saving to businesses, and it's something that we've considered bringing forward for some time. So I would certainly welcome input from a variety of groups, including business.
Okay.
Perhaps we could get some assistance from our media partners in soliciting comment.
Our media partners are here.
From the,
nice try. Debbie. Oh, Mrs. Cole.
It's okay. Your Worship, if it is Council's desire to pursue some public engagement on this matter before giving it formal consideration as to whether to do it or not, you could direct staff to undertake, say, an online survey or a social media survey or some kind of electronic survey just as a place to start and see where that leads us, and then we could bring it back to you and you could decide from there where you wanted to go.
Next meeting. Okay, thank you. And no more from you, Councillor Beal? Troublemaker? Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have the September newsletter from the community gardens, and just a report that they've continued to provide food to the food bank kitchen. And so they just said, numerous heads of lettuce, kale, parsley, potatoes, beets, red cabbage, pole beans, etc., squash, pumpkins, and the food kitchen is always grateful for their vegetable donations, and they are continuing to do that, and they're doing a really good job in the community. So I just want to put that out there, that they're doing a lot for folks in our community. The other piece I just wanted to throw out there, which I forgot last week, was I had attended the Coombs Fall Fair, and they had a tiny house at the fair, and hadn't been inside of a tiny house, and so I was able to get inside, and you know, I've lived on a sailboat in the past, and that tiny house was nicer than living on a sailboat. And it had an awesome bathroom. It had a beautiful kitchen stove, etc. Room for really everything. You know, it's sort of like someone who's keeping it simple. You don't have a whole pile of stuff, but really well put together and not expensive. That tiny house, and I can't remember I took all the information, and of course I left it at home tonight, but the cost of that house was somewhere between $45,000 and $50,000, and very well put together, very well made. So I just want to throw that out to to council, so that we keep that in the back of our minds, that that's actually a home for someone. It could be two people in that home, and $45,000, $50,000, and now they're not on the street. So just want to toss that out there, and it's really good looking. They're nice looking from the outside as well. So I just wanted to toss that out there.
Thank you. Councillor Burton.
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Hey, thank you. And before we move on, I attended this morning with the members of the Parksville Lions Club and the Rotary Club of Parksville AM for the drawing of the 50-50 prize from the tickets that were sold. A lot of tickets were sold, to the point where the 50-50 prize was almost $9,100. So I got to pick the ticket. I tried to look to see if I could, because I bought a number of tickets, but I did not do too many. Yeah. Well, why not? I mean, $9,000. Why wouldn't I? Increase my stipend. So anyway, make a long story short, I stuck my hand in the bin, and I pulled out a lady who lives in Nelson, BC, and the folk called her right away at home, because we had the ticket, we had her phone number on it, and of course she was delighted. But you know, that goes to show you, somebody came here for the summer. They were selling tickets. She bought a ticket to support the park and support the the water park. So it was a wonderful. The Director of Communications was there with me, and the press were there, and it was a wonderful event. And you know, I couldn't thank enough the Lions Club and the Parksville Rotary AM Club for what they do for the city, and they do a great job. And there was a number of them there, and that was my feeling, that they do a lot for the city, and this water park is just going to be spectacular when it's up and running again next summer. That's it for me.